Up next is Bernard Willi from the Joint Airpower Competency Center at NATO. And we're going to take it from pilot training up to concept development.
Good afternoon, everyone. It's certainly an honor to be here representing the JACC. Unlike the previous speakers that you had here today, I am not a fighter pilot. I'm a knuckle dragon helicopter pilot, and that means a couple of things to you. First, I think at 120 knots, so I speak a little slower, so you might be able to understand me a little better than some of the previous presentations. The other is that I don't have many jokes, because as a helicopter pilot, it's only a matter of time before something bad is going to happen. Finally, Chip left the room here, and I would tell him, I don't know about his baby being ugly, but my baby's still beautiful. And as I said, I'm here representing the Joint Airpower Competence Center of the JACC. We're one of NATO's Centers of Excellence. If you're not familiar with that term, Center of Excellence, NATO has a number of organizations that do studies and analysis on a variety of topics. For the JACC, we focus on air and space power challenges. There's other ones, counter-IED, shallow water operations, very niche capabilities. What makes us unique from the other centers of excellence is that we are kind of, I'd like to say, a conglomeration of centers of excellences as they're viewed today in one organization. You'll see, I'll direct your attention to the bottom bullet there, the bumper sticker. We are the first of the centers of excellence. And the reason that's important is that when we were created in 2005, I don't think NATO really had a vision of what they thought a center of excellence would look like. So therefore, as I said, we are a conglomeration of what would be currently the other centers of excellence. So for example, we have unmanned aircraft systems subject matter expertise in our organization. We have personnel recovery expertise in our organization. We have aerial refueling expertise in our organization, all of which could be a COE on their own, but because we are all together in one organization, there's a lot of synergy to be gained by that. And as I said, my background is in combat rescue, personnel recovery, but that's not why I was brought to the JACC. But because I have that background, I'm able to inject myself into personnel recovery discussions and influence different doctrine and concepts with respect to personnel recovery. So we're fairly unique in that regard with respect to the other centers of excellence. You'll see here on our slide, we do independent thought and analysis that contributes to the improvement and transformation of joint air and space power. And you see the two crests, the ACO and the ACT crest up there. Now we are independent, meaning that we are not part of ACT and we are not part of ACO, but we do have connections with both of them. ACT is the one that validates our ability to be in an ACO, but a COE, but ACO is the organization that gives us most of our tasking. So in order for us to stay relevant, we try to make sure that we are doing things that are important to the warfighter. General Lawrence, who is the AirCom commander, is our director, and again, that's unique amongst the centers of excellence in NATO. Normally, the COEs are led by a colonel, an 06, but we are led by General Lawrence. And that's quite an advantage for us. It gives us, as we say, horsepower to get things that we can influence, and it also helps us to stay connected with the warfighter. As he is the AirCom commander, he gives us some guidance on what he believes his warfighters need with respect to study and analysis. Here's the organization of the JACC. For those of you who may have been familiar with us prior to, I would say, 2012, we underwent a pretty significant reorganization. We reduced our leadership overhead by 30%. And cut some of the manpower to become a little bit more efficient. In the past, I would say we had a little bit of challenge to be relevant and you'll see in some of the studies that we did in the past, we did not have a warfighter stakeholder in that, and we've gone to lengths to fix that. But you'll notice on the left side there, exercise and lessons learned, education and training, concepts and doctrine, and capability development. Those are the 4 areas that the Center of Excellence doctrine, MC 236, that says what COEs are supposed to do. Those things, those items come from that document, and those are the things that we influence. Those are the things that we participate in. And as I said, you'll notice the director is General Gorens on the top there. Then we have a German 3-star that resides with us in Kalkar, Germany, which is where we're located. But our day-to-day operations are currently being run by a Dutch 1-star, and she again, she's the one who kind of provides our daily guidance, and that position switches out with an Italian. I'm the combat air branch head. And you see we also have a C4I space branch, an air ops support branch, and an engagement, coordination, and assessment branch, which is the ones that primarily are focused on doing exercise and lessons learned operations. When I first arrived at the JACC in 2012, we had a perception that because we focused most of our efforts on doctrine development, we really didn't have much relevance to the warfighter, and so we've tried to move the focus of what we do to more the operational level, midterm, and you'll see that in some of the projects from the past to what we're currently working on today. Here's our focus areas for 2015. I think probably more important than the ones for 2015 are the ones that we're currently working on for 2016. The ones that are coming out for 2016, the source documents for those are the identified NATO capability shortfalls out of the NDPP and the Wales Summit Declaration. So I think in the future we're going to be a little bit more focused on our focus areas so that we're influencing the things that the leaders really care about and the warfighters really care about with respect to development of capabilities across the alliance. These are the projects that we've completed since 2012. I want to direct your attention to the bottom where it says external requests for support. You'll notice that a number of those projects don't have asterisks next to them. And again, that speaks to, in the past, we had done studies that may not have been as relevant as they could be, as opposed to the ones with stars next to them. Those are the ones that we had advocacy from the warfighter as this. We feel this is an important study to us. And one of the ones I really want to point out to you is UAS operations in contested environments. We have a fairly robust and strong connection in the UAS community. We participate in the Joint Capabilities Group UAS. We've been asked to chair that in the future. So with respect to small nations, I know UAS capability is one of those that does not require as significant a capital investment as, say, for example, an F-35. It's something that small nations can participate in, and so again, if a nation wants to join the JACC, it can get the opportunity to influence those discussions and maybe inject points that are important to that given nation. So another one that I think talks to the importance of the JACC to the smaller nation is the one, the third from the bottom, improving NATO air support to air advisor operations. I don't know if you're familiar with the 2006 Riga summit. It was identified that special operations was an identified shortfall. This study talks about how smaller nations could, without a major capital investment, contribute to special operations, thereby helping the alliance and maybe providing a more important or more relevant input to the overall aviation capability across the alliance. And all of these studies can be found at our JACC.org. and you can download these and take a look at them and get out what you can. Here, these are the current projects that we're working on. Again, you'll see that most of our projects have an external sponsor. We're just in the process of wrapping up standardization of qualifications for NATO helicopter crews in support of land operations. Within the JACC, we have a rotary wing focus group that I started to look at some of the issues across the alliance with respect to rotary wing operations. Again, small nations typically have a fairly robust rotary wing capability because they're not quite so expensive as some of the other capabilities, nations like Hungary, Croatia. They have a lot of rotary wing platforms. So as a smaller nation, to join the JACC, it's an opportunity to influence those discussions. We have a fairly good relationship with NATO A3 that controls the rotary wing piece for AirCom. Most of the rotary wing influence is down at Landcom, which we have a connection with them, but because they are just standing up right now, we're in the process of building those relationships. And again, a lot of what we do is all based on relationships and the connections that we build in order to influence things. Single European Skies is another one. Future Vector Project, if you're familiar with we have an annual conference. That was the theme of the annual conference. General Breedlove was AirCom commander before General Lawrence, so therefore he was our director. When he was the director at the time, he gave us guidance to look at what NATO would look like in the 2040 timeframe. Out of that, we wrote a 3-volume compendium of what we, in the JACC and across the alliance, we leveraged a number of general officers to help us develop a vision for NATO air power in 2040. And again, you can get these documents on our JACC website. We're in the process of trying to realize the recommendations that we made in that document. And then finally, the feasibility study for the creation of a multinational joint ISR unit. As I mentioned, that's one of those capabilities that I think is important for small nations, just because of the versatility of ISR. The study itself is looking at how a medium altitude, long endurance capability can help smaller nations. We're looking at trying to see how a unit that is comprised of, we don't want to say predator, but a predator-like capability, similar to the AGS, the Alliance Ground Surveillance capability that's currently being built. We see this kind of as a hand-in-glove capability, whereas the AGS is a little bit more wider in scope. This unit would be a little bit more focused. So we're looking at a feasibility study of how NATO could build a unit like that. I mentioned the conference that we had last year on Future Vector. This year, the conference will take place in October, and the theme will be mitigating disinformation campaigns against air power. So you know that in the past, there's been media reports where our adversaries have said that air power has created undue civilian casualties and things like that, and it's affected our ability to employ air power. So the discussion is going to be how do we counter that with strategic communications and things like that. I think it's going to be a fairly interesting discussion. And you had a question?
Yes, I do. Have you picked up a disinformation campaign directed against the F-35 by people who try and take it off the table because it is a threat to them?
I have not heard about that.
You have not?
So no, I'm not saying it's out there. I'm just not aware of it.
Yeah.
So
Just curious.
yeah. So, yeah, we are. I don't. As I mentioned earlier, or I may not have mentioned, but one of the centers of excellence that's being stood up is the Strategic Communication Center of Excellence. We're doing that in conjunction with them to help us hold this conference. So again, I think this is going to be fairly interesting. For this group, potential future projects, probably the one that you care about the most is system integration through communications protocol and continuous battle space. In plain English, what that means is how does the Alliance leverage all of the data that's out there? And I think that's been a theme that we've heard with respect to the F-35 and all the information that's going to be out there. We had a Spanish lieutenant colonel, very brilliant guy, just joined us recently, who came up with this idea. You'll see we don't have an external sponsor at this point. I don't think it's going to be it's going to be too difficult to find one, but we want to get an external sponsor to help us with this, and I think it's going to be a fairly important one for the JACC. Air transport study is also on tap in the framework of future alliance operations. That's kind of a broader scope along that future vector, not just looking at air power, but looking at the alliance combat capability independent of service. JACC's roles and activities, you can see that we are the chairman for a few fairly important groups across the alliance. We have a robust air refueling presence, and although you may not have tankers, you are probably a nation that uses tankers and is a receiver. So again, that's a point where smaller nations can use our organization to help leverage and talk about the discussions that are important to you. We are the chair of the Maritime Air Coordination Group, and again, that's important because air power is not just air forces. Air power is naval air forces and land-controlled air forces, rotary wing platforms as well. So that's within our scope in the work that we do. We're the custodians for a number of NATO documents. And we also contribute and attend a variety of meetings. You see we have 93 activities. These are 93 meetings that we participate in. So we're on the road quite a bit in the JACC. So finally, what do I offer you as a smaller nation within the alliance? Well, I think I've spoken already about the work that we're doing with respect to the UAS capability. We did the recent study on UAS operations in contested environments, and next generation fighters. We've got a variety of F-35 users within the organization, and a lot of discussion goes on with respect to how that's going to be employed. I've already spoken about rotary wing capabilities, combat support. Again, we have a fairly robust air refueling and logistics section, the Future Vector Project, the comments out of the Whale Summit Declaration, and also we hold a think tank forum that I'll need to send an invite to you guys, where we bring the representatives from a variety of study groups, think tanks across the alliance into the JACC. We talk about the studies that we're doing. We talk about how we can work together so that we can gain synergies on the things that we're doing. So, and then, most importantly, is that as a smaller nation, if you're part of the JACC, you can facilitate projects that are of interest to your nation, which we may not be aware of. And I will tell you, if you were not represented in the JACC, if you send us a request for support, we will entertain it. But obviously, if there's a nation that is represented in the JACC, that will take a higher priority. I say that because we helped Croatia with some work regarding their multinational aviation training center. So we're fairly agnostic with respect to that. We help the entire alliance, but obviously nothing gets done without manpower. So if you don't contribute, then we can't do the work that we're doing. So that concludes my presentation. And if you have any questions for me, I guess we'll grab a seat up here. Thank you.